family. God bless. Hope you're having a blessed day. Today's video gonna be about 15 Bible Mandela effects. Let's get right into it.
The Mandela effect somehow affects everything, and since the Bible, the Christian religious text, is so deeply ingrained in a lot of people's lives, when changes appear in it and around it, it's much easier to spot those changes. This video is a collection of new changes as well as changes I've covered before brought together into one giant video. Just as I've covered music, movies, history, and other Mandela effect topics, this is yet another collection to enjoy. Whether you believe in this book, believe in a different book, or just enjoy the conversation like me, these are going to blow your mind. Some of these have to do directly with the Bible, while others have to do with religious figures or religious artwork. But that's enough build-up. Let's talk about some Bible Mandela effects. Let's start small and build up to the bigger effects. Do you remember the story of the 3 wise men that went to see Jesus when he was born? Well, the Bible doesn't actually say 3. In fact, it doesn't give a number at all. Where the number 3 came from is anyone's guess. Ancient scholars speculate that if it happened, it was actually between 2 and up to 11 wise men. How about that? Is that what you remember? Or how about this? Here are some phrases that people have attributed to the Bible.
I mean, I ain't gonna lie. I read that specific story like not even a month ago.
Let me know if you remember any of these. God never gives you
And it said 3.
more than you can handle. When God closes a door, he opens a window. God helps those who help themselves. God never gives you more than you can handle. Nobody's perfect, or everyone makes mistakes. Hate the sin, love the sinner. And finally, spare the rod, spoil the child. Absolutely none of these are from the Bible, and none of them are mentioned in the Bible. At least, not currently. So where did these come from, and why do people attribute them to the Bible? Well, that's a new mystery entirely. Next up, let's talk about dragons. Everybody knows the Bible mentions dragons a total of 35 times, right? And we are just talking about Revelations. Dragons are mentioned 21 times in the Old Testament and 14 times in the New Testament. And that's not all. Unicorns are mentioned 9 times in the Bible, and the word matrix is used 5 times. Is this what you remember? Then there is the spelling Mandela effect that has bothered so many. Many people remember it being called the Book of Revelations, when it is actually called the Book of Revelation. A small change, but it's one that has messed up a ridiculous amount of people. Another effect is the creation of Adam, a gorgeous painting by Michelangelo on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. I'm sure most of you remember this one. It's the image of Adam reaching up his hand to God as God reaches down his finger to Adam. Except now that isn't actually how it looks. The placement of the two are the same, but now God's hand is below Adam's and is reaching up to Adam. This seemingly small change has confused so many online and has led to many people saying something's not right here, something's wrong, this isn't what I remember. So does this look right to you, or should God's hand be much higher? Up next are 6 previously covered Bible Mandela effects I've talked about over the years with updated edits and visuals. Please enjoy and be sure to stay tuned until the end for one more Bible Mandela effect that I've never talked about before. Today, we're looking at the classic lion and lamb quote. If you didn't already know, this Mandela effect comes from the Bible in the book Isaiah 11:6, and it says some variation of the lion will lie with the lamb, or the lion will dwell with the lamb, but apparently it has never said that. Ever. Instead of lion, it now says wolf. Does that sound right to you?
No.
The wolf will lie with the lamb, or the wolf will dwell with the lamb. This Mandela effect has been talked about to death, so there isn't much more that I can add to the conversation. But what I can add is this amazing residue from the 1960s. Apparently this weird Mandela effect stuff was noticed all the way back then, but obviously it didn't have that name yet. Found by user Resplendent Amore, here is an article from November 2nd, 1963, that details the quest for what happened to this Bible verse. Where did it go? Why did it change? How the search started and why it's so troubling for everyone. It's a really fascinating read, and I'll have it linked in the description below. You certainly don't have to read it, but it's neat to see the Mandela effect confuse minds even back then.
That's crazy.
But that's not all. There's another old newspaper article from January 11th, 1911, detailing how this verse isn't in the Bible despite everyone thinking it is. It's amazing how this incorrect detail that could be solved in minutes has somehow permeated for at least 110 years without ever being corrected. How long has the Mandela effect been in effect? What do you think?
That's crazy.
In the Old Testament of the Bible lies the book of Judges. In this book is the fantastically entertaining and bizarre story of Samson and Delilah. Samson was blessed by God and given ridiculous strength. The source of this strength was sought after by many of his enemies. Delilah was a woman that Samson loved, but she didn't love him. She was eventually bribed by Samson's enemies with a reward of many silver coins if she could discover the source of Samson's power. After multiple false answers from Samson, he finally admitted to her that his power came from his long hair. Here's where the Mandela effect comes in. What happens next? Did she wait for him to fall asleep and then cut his hair off? Or did she wait for him to fall asleep and order a servant to cut his hair off? It seems like a simple change, but it's been
She waited for him to fall asleep and cut his hair off.
freaking out a lot of
That's what I remember.
people online. As it is now, she never personally cut his hair. It was a servant that she summoned that did all the cutting. So what do you think? Is that what you remember? Another bonus Mandela effect comes at the end of the story after Samson is blinded and enslaved by his enemies. Samson's hair eventually regrows, regaining him his ridiculous strength. He grabs the massive columns around him and collapses the structure down on everyone, killing himself, his enemies, and Delilah. Except now, Delilah isn't there and isn't mentioned after her betrayal of him. In this version, we're never going to know her fate. All we know is that she got a lot of silver coins and she cashed out. There was no repercussions whatsoever as far as we know for betraying God's anointed one, Samson. So what do you think? Did either of these Mandela effects hit you? What did you remember about this biblical story? Let me know in the comments below. Typically, the most standout moments in history are tied to war, conflict, and terror because of the shock and awe. These are the moments that stick out in people's minds. But this next Mandela effect is different. It's shocking because it throws away a common belief about a specific historical figure. Which figure? Well, none other than the Christian figure Jesus Christ. So here is my question for you. What was Jesus' profession while he was alive? Was he a stonemason?
He was a carpenter. He was a carpenter.
Or a carpenter? You know, if it's in my video, something's gotta be off. Jesus was in fact not a carpenter, but a stonemason. The original assumption of carpentry came from a mistranslation centuries ago of the Greek word tekton, meaning craftsman or builder. Apparently no one noticed this incorrect translation for centuries. Another detail backing up this fact is that the majority of homes built back then and now modern day.
So it's like, if this is able to change, it's like, was it ever changed before? Like, you know what I mean? Like, did this stuff just start happening now? Or has it been happening for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and we so far away from the truth of reality? You understand what I'm trying to say? Like, who are we to say that this new Mandela effect stuff that's been going on is recent? Like, this could have been going on before our time. You understand what I'm saying? They could have been mixing stuff around. Like, so it really make you question your reality. Like, what's real or what's fake? What's the truth? What's a lie? We living in some strange times right now, man.
Israel were built with stone. In fact, the area where Jesus would have grown up had and still has little to no trees. It's estimated that 9 out of every 10 projects would have been stone related, not wood related. Not to mention during the time of his life, Nazareth was only 3 miles from a stone quarry. This Mandela effect is a well that you can fall down. There's lots of information and dozens of other pieces of historical evidence to back up this. So I'm just going to leave a link in the video description if you want to read more. It's pretty fascinating stuff. So you tell me, do you believe this major detail of Jesus' life simply went unnoticed for thousands of years, or has something changed? Is it possible that humans are simply gaining a better understanding of the ancient world, or has the Mandela effect struck again? Either way, it's pretty fascinating, and I'd love to hear your take on it. This next Mandela effect comes from the Christian Bible. So if you're not familiar with the climax of Jesus' story, let me catch you up. Jesus Christ had his last supper with his disciples. Afterwards, Judas betrays Jesus by leading a group of armed people to arrest him. So here is where the new Mandela effect comes in. Peter, one of Jesus' disciples, cuts off the ear of a man trying to arrest Jesus. The man whose ear is cut off, is he a slave or a Roman soldier? So the correct answer to this question is slave. For some reason, many people believe this man whose ear was cut off was a Roman soldier, but is now in fact a temple slave. Is that what you remember? Now, the collection of books in the Bible is ripe for Mandela effects, because the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke are all varying retellings of the same stories. The only real outlier is John, who has even more numerous changes. All this to say, one could believe the Mandela effect in this case could be caused by the differences in books, but that doesn't solve the mystery either. In fact, the incident of the slave's ear being cut off is recorded in all 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But the slave being named Malchus and the disciple being named Simon Peter are only mentioned in John. Even stranger still, in one of the books, Luke, Jesus apparently healed the slave's ear, but not in the other 3 books. So what do you think? Does this mean anything to you? Did you already have an opinion on this topic? I'm curious to hear what everyone else out there remembered. Was it a Roman soldier's ear that was cut off, or was it a slave? As always, leave all your thoughts below.
Here's a fun Bible Mandela effect that I've seen quite a few people online getting confused about. What is the name of the God in the Christian Bible's Old Testament? According to this supposed change, it isn't what you think. The verse in question comes from the Old Testament book of Exodus, chapter 34, verse 14. Finish this quote if you know it. Do not worship any other God, for the Lord, whose name is blank, is a jealous God. Some of you might think it's God, or Yahweh, or some other variation of the biblical God's name. But you'd be wrong. The name that has tons of people confused and arguing over is jealous. The God of the Bible's name is now apparently jealous. How about that? The full verse goes, do not worship any other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. So digging deeper, I looked into other translations to see if it was a mistranslation, and nope, all of them say something similar. The oldest version that I could find, the King James Version, says, for thou shalt worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God.
What?
It's pretty weird. Either jealous was
That wasn't it. That wasn't it. That's crazy. His name is jealous? It doesn't even make sense. Like, what? They blew my mind with that one.
always his name and nobody really noticed it, or something changed. So let's go deeper and older. I went all the way back to the Torah, which is the Jewish holy text. Now the Torah is the first 5 books of the Christian Old Testament. So let's see what it says. When translated to English, it reads, for you shall not prostrate yourself before another God, because the Lord, whose name is Jealous One, is a jealous God. One last interesting thing before we move on.
I feel like they're trying to mock God there, right? So what's going on here? Like,
if you look up names of God in Christianity on Wikipedia and look at the edits, you can see that jealous was not always on this page. In fact, it was added December 21st, 2017. So what do you think about this?
it was added.
I don't have an opinion on this either way, but I find the confusion and the debate to be pretty interesting. So anyone out there that is religious in this way, do you remember jealous being your God's name? Let me hear it in the comments below. In the New Testament of the Bible, there is something called the Book of Revelation. Within this confusing and horrifying book, there are descriptions of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I know we're going dark with this last one. A chapter within the Book of Revelation tells of a book in God's hand that is sealed with 7 seals. The first 4 of those 7 seals summon the 4 horsemen, each on a different horse. One white, one red, one black, and one pale. These creatures are believed by some to bring about the end of the earth. Spooky stuff. Even if you're unfamiliar with the Bible, the names of these horsemen are fairly common knowledge. So who are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse? There is war, plague, famine, and blank. Is it pestilence or is it conquest? I'm sure if you're like most of the people online, you said war, plague, famine, and pestilence, which isn't correct. Another name people remembered is death, which isn't a horseman either. The correct answer is conquest, war, plague, and famine. So here we go again, another Bible Mandela effect change. For me, I'm always going to remember pestilence, but I guess pestilence is gone and now we have conquest.
What's going on here? Like how these things is changing? Like, what else been changed? You understand what I'm saying? That we're not aware of, or probably before our time. It's crazy, man, that they do this. Like, it really make you think about your reality.
And hey, since you've watched up to this point in the video, I'm going to reward you with a bonus effect.
Let's wrap this video up with one final Mandela effect that has multiple stages. In the book of Genesis chapter 8, it talks about the world being flooded, and Noah on his ark with all the animals. How many days did this last? Really think about this for a second. How many days was Noah in the water, in his ark, with the animals?
40 days, 40 nights.
Did you think it was 40? Maybe 40 days and 40 nights? Nope. Turns out that's not correct. It lasted between 370 and 380 days. Not only that, after all the flooding, what bird did Noah first send out to look for land? Really think about it for a second. I know a lot of people probably said dove. Then you're incorrect. Noah actually sent out a raven first, then a dove, and then that dove came back. He waited 7 days, and then he sent another dove out that came back with an olive leaf. Then Noah waited 7 more days, and he sent out another dove that didn't come back. So now it turns out he sent out a raven, and then 3 doves, and the second dove found the olive leaf, and the third one just, I don't know, died, drowned somewhere. It's very confusing. So let me know, is this what you remember? Is this how the story goes in your mind? If not, let me hear it in the comments. And remember, Never stop searching.
Yo, that's crazy right there. Like, that really got me thinking, because I know a lot of those Bible verses. I know a lot of those stuff that was in that Bible for sure. Like how can it just change like that, right? Like, no trace. Like, it just changed. Like we just went into a different reality or something, right? Leave a comment down below and let me know what y'all think, because honestly, I don't know what to think about it. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Y'all be safe out there, man. God bless.